Hello everyone, welcome to The Green Man. Hope you're all good and well. So time for a one-off midweek premiere on the channel where I'm going to be talking about 5 underrated sci-fi films, and I'm selecting one from each decade since the 1970s going up to the 2010s. Now, everyone's opinion of what is underrated is always very subjective, and this is no exception. I think all these films are at the very least good films, so regardless of what you think of the definition of underrated, I think these are all worth checking out nevertheless. So you might find something here you enjoy if you don't recognise or if you haven't heard of the film. But I think a couple of these films as well certainly were flops at the box office when they came out and weren't necessarily very commercially successful, so that, in my opinion, makes them a little bit underrated from that point of view, and they may have developed in some cases. I think these films have become cult classics where they have cultivated a certain following over a period of time. So we're going to crack on with this list now, and first up is 1971's The Andromeda Strain, not to be confused with the miniseries from the 2000s, and this was adapted from the book, Michael Crichton's the book of the same name, the novel of the same name. So this was directed by Robert Wise, and basically what happens is a satellite crashes in Piedmont in New Mexico. An investigative team go to check out what's happened, and they find that a lot of people have been killed seemingly by some sort of virus or alien organism, which is found to be on the satellite. So they take the satellite back to a laboratory, a top secret laboratory, in somewhere called Wildfire. It's like this big underground facility, and you sort of gradually see how the science element comes in, and they sort of analyse the alien organism in very close detail. And the film is very scientific, it's very analytical, but I quite enjoy that about this film. You know, if you like your films to be quite fast-paced though, you probably won't enjoy this because it is a very, very slow burn. But I think if you're a science geek and you enjoy the sort of, deductive reasoning and that kind of thing, and working out what the organism might be, or, how it sort of functions and trying to work it out, you might actually really like this film. So I do recommend it from that perspective. And I do think it's a bit underrated. I do think, if anything, the film gets very, very exciting in the last kind of 15-20 minutes anyway. So even if you are the slightly less patient type, I do think you'd be rewarded if you manage to stick the length of the film, because there's a good climax at the end of this one as well. I actually really enjoyed this, and I think that, yeah, there's like I say, very good climax and payoff, so one that is worth maybe checking out if you like this kind of thing, and this sort of more investigative, slightly, I don't want to say detective, but you probably get the gist of what I'm saying for this one. So that's The Andromeda Strain from 1971. Next up we have WARGAMES from 1983, one of my long-time favourite films actually, but I hadn't watched it for a while until I revisited it for this little video. And it's a sci-fi techno thriller directed by John Badham, stars Matthew Broderick, John Wood and Ali Sheedy as well. And this follows a teenager who actually manages to hack in to a US supercomputer, and he gets involved in a simulated war game in effect. But it's an example of one of these films where the technology and using it is very dangerous. I mean, what he actually manages to do is to connect to a military command base called NORAD, and he manages to make them think that the Soviet Union have launched missiles on a load of American cities, and it sends this military command base into a complete panic. And he also ends up being a suspect in all this, as working for, I think, on behalf of the Soviet Union. I love this film. I think it's got the right amount of humour, and it's very entertaining. It's kind of relevant as well, and the reason I say I think it's quite relevant is because at the moment, with all that's happening with AI and stuff like that, it just feels like the technology outsmarting humans parts of this film certainly suddenly, are relevant. I suppose lots of films have done that in the past, not just WARGAMES, but WARGAMES does it in just an intelligent way. I don't know if I can fully describe it adequately here, but it's just done in an intelligent way. And yeah, I love the film and the humour of the film in particular because I think it keeps it from ever becoming too colourless. So it's not one of those films that's so focused on the technology and the science that it loses its sense of humour or its kind of fun-loving aspects. Think maybe, I don't know, like a modern techno thriller from maybe the 2000s, and combine that with a sort of slightly Stranger Things vibe with the sort of teenage mischief element to this film as well, and you get close to something like WARGAMES. So I do recommend WARGAMES from 1983 without any doubt. That's a really good one. Number 3 on my list comes from the 90s. We're moving on to the 1990s, moving on to 1998, and the film Dark City, with some big stars in this film like Rufus Sewell and Jennifer Connelly. This was directed by Alex Proyas, and this is an interesting one. It's a visual masterpiece for me. It's a little bit like the 90s answer to Blade Runner, and it's really, really good. It's actually fantastic just to watch. Even now, with all the CGI that we have and the more modern CGI, everything that we watch now, I still think Dark City looks pretty good now. And I enjoy just the gradual unravelling in this one as well, the unveiling to us of the key plot points and the little twists that the film gradually introduces as well is done quite cleverly too. As you learn more about the world that this guy John Murdoch, portrayed by Rufus Sewell, and what he's kind of learning about the world as it becomes, or as he discovers through these powers that he has. If you've seen this film, I think you'll know what I'm talking about, and you'll maybe also see it as something as a kind of visual, pretty stunning visual piece. And I loved the whole, when I was younger, quite a lot younger, I loved the whole idea of this Shell Beach thing that he was trying to find as well. And just the sort of dreaminess of that. And it's kind of, the film has a bit of a dreamlike flow to it with the manipulation of the landscapes and stuff around him and all this stuff. And I just think it's a really, really great little sci-fi film that I think is a bit of a cult classic now. I think that's the film that I would say is a definite cult classic from these choices. So again, highly recommend Dark City from 1998. Go and check that one out. Next up, from the 2000s now, we're getting more recent. We're going to 2009. We're going to Pandorum, which is a sci-fi horror film. This is a bit like the 2000s answer to the 1990s Event Horizon. It's very claustrophobic. It's kind of a deep space-like situation. Everything's done quite up close. It's filmed in the dark a lot of the time. Stars Dennis Quaid and Ben Foster. This one was directed by, I'm not sure I can read what I've written here, Christian Alver or something like that. I may have to correct that in the description box if I get that wrong, or as a sort of text on the video. Anyway, the film was pretty poorly received when it came out. It was also a flop at the box office, this one. But on watching this, and I think it's gathered a bit more popularity over time. I've seen I think Reddit comments about it that are quite positive, and various other forums. And I think it's because the film actually has, with its claustrophobic and I think some clever cinematography, it does maneuver you quite well through the film as a viewer. And I think the monsters are pretty cool. I think just the general build-up of tension is good towards the end. And there are a couple of really good twists at the end of the movie as well, as you learn more about what the actual situation is in this deep space vessel. And it just gets really, really good towards its closure. So yeah, it's another one that I recommend, this time from the 2000s. We move on to the 2010s. Finally, last but not least, one of my favourite movies, certainly sci-fi films, I'd say, from the last 10 years, that I think is just a really solid film that I just remember I just really enjoyed watching it. This was released on Netflix, directed by Nick Mathieu from 2016, stars James Badge Dale, Max Maltini and Emily Mortimer. Basically this doctor, he flies to Moldova. He's consulted about these kind of hyperspectral imaging goggles that I think he invented. And whilst he's in Moldova, he and these soldiers discover these kind of apparitions. And they're sort of like camouflage. They're slightly transparent, and they find that they're killing soldiers at an alarming rate, and so it's causing chaos in this war zone. And they basically have to work out what the weaknesses of these apparitions are, or what is creating, what technology is it that's creating the apparitions, and what are the weaknesses of that technology, and all of that is kind of investigated and sort of, again, I use the word unraveled because I've already said that, maybe unveiled rather, is done as you kind of go through the different parts of this movie. And I just remember, like I say, just enjoying this one more than I was expecting. I think perhaps because it surprised me at how much I liked it. It's not necessarily an Oscar-worthy film or anything like that. In fact, some of these films I wouldn't say were very Oscar-worthy anyway. But I think it's another smart film with some good ideas in it that was clever, with good enough performances to keep you watching. And Spectral is one that I suggest if you've got access to Netflix that you do check that one out. The film also gave me a slight crush on Emily Mortimer as well, which I just thought I'd add in. But anyway, let's finish things off there. I do recommend these 5 films for sure for you, as just, check them out. They're really cool. And hope you get something out of these, and maybe you can come back and say in the comments, or, if you know these films, let me know. I mean, do you think they're underrated? Do you love these films, or do you hate them? I don't know. Let me know. Otherwise, for me, thanks as ever for coming along and watching. Don't forget to drop a sub if you like this kind of content. I do quite broad stuff on this channel, from music and album reviews, rock and metal, right through to sci-fi, fantasy and horror. So take care, everybody. Until next time, it's bye for now.